the description that you're giving is just a way that nonsense can be.
That you can describe it, but there's no way to evaluate the description.
Yeah, which is just a way nonsense can be.
Yeah.
Well, and there is actually, some things like entertainment that can be evaluated. That's actually something in, like last night that me and Ed were doing, just kind of like out of just, whateverness.
Yeah, like if you can talk about like the accurate narrative of
a storyline.
Yes, and how something is true to that narrative. There's something that can be analyzed there. It's kind of like a blend of meta and pata, but we're not exactly sure how to make that distinction, kind of is what it comes down to. And it seems like it's a subjective preference nonetheless.
The structure that we are using to describe the pataphysical things is mapped to like metaphysical or physical things.
Cool.
Like we are using things that do exist to try to describe things which don't exist.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yep. It's
the key word being right, because we ultimately fail. We just are often ignorant of our failure.
Yeah, because most of the time when you come up with things like paradoxes, they cannot be they cannot be evaluated.
Yeah, they're not coherently descriptive.
They are just essentially false.
Yeah, they're just nonsense.
Yeah.
You just came up with a way that humans have made interesting nonsense.
Yeah. And when it's really sophisticated, it can be a comic book or a video game or a movie.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or for instance, like David Moore thinks, the principle of irony, right? Like the idea that defining irony makes it false, which makes it true, which makes it false, which makes it true, you know what I mean? And he thinks that lies at the center of reality. And like, I can understand where he's coming from, because that's a fascinating thing to notice.
Yeah. I think that's right there, that line, brother. Like right there where meta and pata meet, I think is that ironic line that we're all kind of struggling with when we're trying to define, which is fundamentally a lie. There is no definition objectively, were it not for subjectivity doing it. But when we go to do it, somehow we can furnish our descriptions with the clothing of metaphysics, though they're just nonsense monsters imagined into.
Well, if your nonsense is complex enough that you cannot evaluate it quickly enough, then you just have to roll with it.
Yeah, I agree.
I like
kind
that.
of have work is that like there's so much going on that for you to correctly interpret everything, like each individual pixel as this pixel did this pixel did this, the only way to interact with it is to create an abstraction which doesn't actually exist.
I never actually thought about that.
Use to interact with it in the way you want to, like to get the desired outcome essentially.
It becomes a giddy blur, and we just, like you said, roll with it, and then after the fact, I think we kind of just discard that kind of stuff.
Well, I think particularly in video games, when we're interfacing with technology, we're like extending our pataphysical self like up to the realm of this physical, like technical object.
Yeah.
And like manipulating it with dexterity that is otherwise like unimaginable.
Amazing thumb powers.
Yeah, like it's crazy, man. The things that you can do in video games are so incredibly complicated.
Yep.
Like 200 years ago, it would have looked like magic for sure.
Absolutely.
And now we're integrating with it just through virtual reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's what makes the blend between, what we're trying to consider as natural simulation and what is being brought up now as simulation theory, and how...
I mean, it's not exactly just being brought up.
Kind of, blurry.
It's a giddy blur there. And we can't map all of the informational content that's coming at us. So we isolate it to the preferred frame of reference that we have based on our values. And the rest is trimmed. Like, so we had this great little analogy, like frames of reference, like this right here being the way that we could perceive reality from a very informed philosophical lens. Or if we want to get more nuanced, we got like this tiny little scientific lens that can microscope into the details. But then you have something like religion, perhaps, that's just this huge it's going to let in a whole bunch of beliefs.
Metaphysical
Yeah.
bubble that kind of encompasses it all.
And they're decreasing in terms of their scope that they can perceive accurately. Open causes more creative thoughts, and closed, not closed, but like the aperture is tightened, so to speak, and the parameters are focused. So go for it.
Yeah, I think that's a fucking excellent way to describe it. And I think that it's a great way to describe as well the limitations of the scientific perspective, because it is really accurate in its field of reference, but then it doesn't have the scope that it needs to account for reality.
Yeah, precisely.
And so scientists often cannot see past that scientific lens to see that, like, science itself will never uncover the nature of reality, because you can't do a test like that.
Right. You can't actually analyze the basis of reality, the empirical basis.
You don't get to touch that bit. It's under the hood.